Thank you very much, Vyash. A very good night to you all. The chairman of the borough of Diego Martin, Alderman Siglet Jack, party officers, all Mrs. Joan Yule Williams, my cabinet colleagues. I'm happy tonight to acknowledge Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Northeast, Minister of Finance, Member of Ms. Donna Cox, who is our Social Development Minister, Social Development and Family Services, my neighbor, Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Central, Minister of Communication, Simon Dinabuga. And I also have with me in the lineup tonight the Minister of Education from St. Anne's East, visiting the West. You know, when you come from the East, if you go as far as you want to go, you end up in the West. And of course, we have former Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Central, Dr. Amory Brung, our Foreign and CARICOM Affairs Minister. Very good night to you all and welcome. But permit me, among all these friendly faces in Diego Martin, from the mountains to the valleys, I want to acknowledge 3 women. And I'm sure you won't begrudge me that. One is Mrs. Suzanne Hong, head of the Diego Martin Messenger. On my right is Jackie Lazarus. And Jackie has brought Barbara. So I know I'm in Diego Martin West, and I know that these are the people that make the Diego Martin area, especially Diego Martin West, tick. So thank you all very much for coming out. And this is a season which is coming to an end very rapidly. We have another, 3 more days to go. And we've been talking a lot about local government reform. But it would be remiss of me if I do not specially acknowledge all the young people who have joined our campaign and our cause, many of whom are standing around the room here tonight. Welcome and thank you all very much. It's a phenomenon that we've been seeing across Trinidad as we've been going through this campaign. A lot of young people identifying with the cause of the PNM in the interest of developing our nation under a stable political banner. But ladies and gentlemen, what exactly is local government? Even before we talk about reform, what is local government? Local government is that area of authority which is operated, meaning funded by, and has authority over, by the government in your neighborhood. I had a constituent in Covine. She passed away a few years ago. She was just over 100 years old. And I had the opportunity when she was over 100 years old to be talking with her, and she had a very vivid memory of what Diego Martin was like when she came in here as a 17-year-old girl. She came into a cocoa estate in Covine, and she grew up there and saw Covine transform from being a cocoa estate into being the Covine that we knew it at the time when we spoke. The same thing can be said of Diego Martin in general, from the hills of Paramin all the way to Chaguaramas. That's our Diego Martin. And we have had continuous progress in this Diego Martin area, which is the northwestern part of the country. Those of you who are very young, you wouldn't know when there was no Diamond Vale. Those of you who are not as old as I am, you wouldn't know when the road was a single lane, a double lane road, and that was a big, before the highway was built, all of us were on that 2-lane road, taking taxi, going back and forth. That was Diego Martin. But Diego Martin has been continuously developing, and local government had been playing a role in that development by providing the management and distribution of goods and services as the area developed. You remember when Diego Martin used to be St. George West? And you still come and ask for a job in county? Because it was the county council. And then later on, it became the corporation of Diego Martin when under the NAR, advances were made in local government and the country, Trinidad was divided into 14 corporations. Some big ones like Tunapuna Piaco, Cuvatabaquita Alparo, some cities like San Fernando, boroughs like Chaguanas, corporations like Mayaro, and Diego Martin was a corporation. Until recently, when as part of this onward progress in the development of a governance structure, Diego Martin became a borough. And I am so proud to have had something to do with that. Because we were on that pathway. And I want you all to see this as better, stronger, more effective management. Because the key to it is management. There was a time when the management was done by the county council, then the management was done by the corporation, and now the management would be done by the borough. And maybe one day in the not too distant future, we might talk about the city of Diego Martin. So, ladies and gentlemen, one of the problems that we have always acknowledged is that there were shortcomings with this local government management system. One of the main problems that we always had, not only here in Diego Martin, but across the country, was that the lines were not very clear between authorities with the public service and the authority of the executive that you are supposed to be electing on election day. So you elect these councillors, you have a chairman of the corporation, and you have in this great difficulty in getting the council to focus on your needs when you want to be focused on. If your drain is clogged, or your pavement is broken, or you have an infestation of mosquitoes, or you want the rats killed somewhere in the neighborhood, you want the garbage collected. We have always been feeling that the local government management system was weak. That was one given. The other thing too is that whenever you corner the councillors, or even the CEO, they will tell you, we don't have the money to do it now. We can't do it in a reasonable time frame. They can't even tell you we'll do it next month. They simply say, we don't have the resources, or we don't have it. And you're living in this situation where a small problem is a big annoyance, a general nuisance, because a small intervention cannot be made. That's what's going on. And we, across Trinidad, had this period of consultation. And you in Diego Martin Central, you would know of a lot about that period of consultation because it was led by your MP at one stage. Former Member of Parliament Ken Valley was a champion in this local government thing. And he advanced the process where we did have consultation across the country. Minister Franklin Khan was a follow-up, and now we have other ministers. And today, Minister Faris Al-Rawi is our local government minister. But a lot of consultation generated a lot of recommendations. One of the simple recommendations was that the term should be 4 years as against 3 years. So in other words, when you elect somebody, instead of giving them 36 months, you give them 48 months. They have time to plan and time to execute before they come back to the polls again. That was one of the decisions. And we came to that position not by just throwing straws, but we listened to what was being said. The other thing is, we want the corporation to have its own revenue stream. And how does the corporation do that? Land and building taxes across the country is normally collected by the District Revenue Office, and when it's collected, what happens to it? Having raised that question, I want at this point in our proceedings to invite the Minister of Finance to answer that question. Minister, could you join us, please? Yeah. That's what he used to do in school.
I always have to check and make sure I get the question right. Eh?
Not paying attention to the teacher.
Good evening, everybody. The way in which the property tax will work is very simple and very straightforward. When we went to the Parliament in 2022 and made changes to the Municipal Corporations Act, one of the changes we made was that as soon as everything is ready for the collection of residential property tax, let me pause there, we were very careful to limit the collection of property tax by corporations to residential property tax in the first instance, because the other types of property tax are a little more complicated, industrial, commercial, and so on, a little more complicated to do valuations and so on. But valuations of property are straightforward. So we started off by amending the law. So the law now states that all corporations, this is all 14, will now collect and retain the property tax for the residential properties within the boundaries of their corporation. The way this is done, the Valuation Division has already reached the threshold of over 50% of all residential properties in Trinidad and Tobago. That's in the law. Once they value more than 50% of all residential properties, they then can send a document called a valuation roll, which is sent to the Minister of Finance, in this case, me at this time. And that valuation roll will have all of the addresses of all of the residential properties in the 14 local government corporations with values and owners as well. There's limited information, but owner, type of property, and that, by that I mean whether a single dwelling property, 5-bedroom property, that sort of thing, and value. That is sent to the minister and it's ready. And then that roll, I publish a notice, which I'm going to do very soon, and that goes to the Board of Inland Revenue. The Board of Inland Revenue then uses the valuations that have been done by the Valuation Division, and they multiply it by 3%. Now that's a very important thing, because there's a lot of rumor, movelang, and foolishness outside there, especially from the opposition, where they're trying to fool people into believing that that 3% is multiplied by the capital value, the sale price of your property. It is not. What the Valuation Division has done is put a notional rental value against your property. $3,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $5,000 a month, whatever it is. But the norm in Trinidad and Tobago, we are finding out, for almost 2/3 of all dwelling houses in Trinidad and Tobago, apartments, and so on, residential properties, the norm, the valuation has been put is somewhere in the vicinity of about $3,000 a month. The 3% is then multiplied by that, and you will get $90 a month or $1,000 a year. So I can state categorically tonight that for over 60%, in fact, almost 65% of all properties in Trinidad and Tobago, residential, your tax will not exceed $1,000, $1,050 per year, or about $90 to $95 per month. However, there's another subcategory. About half of them are half of that. So for about 30% of the population, or 25% of the population, your tax is going to be $40 a month, $480 a year. I want to clear that up, because the opposition is saying it is 3% of the sale price. So let's say you have a typical apartment worth $1 million, which is not too difficult these days. They're saying 3% of that, you will have to pay $30,000. That's the kind of lie outside there. It's not true. It is 3% of rental, and the rentals are being adjudged to be somewhere, for 2/3 of the population, the rental is somewhere between $1,500 a month and $3,000 a month. Now, the Board of Inland Revenue, having received the valuation roll with all of this information, then will send a notice to every homeowner in each corporation. You'll get a notice, and for 65% of the population, you'll get a notice saying you are due to pay property tax of somewhere between $500 and $1,000 per year, okay? You will then have a period of time to pay that, but you pay it to the regional corporation, the city corporation, the borough corporation, as the case may be. What this does for the corporations, for the first time, they have a dedicated and reliable stream of income. And the average for corporations, somewhere between 30 to $40 million, for example, Diego Martin, will get about $40 million a year from this property tax. Now, just imagine what they could do with that, because we're going to restrict it to goods and services. By that I mean things like garbage collection, water trucking, and so on, and development programs, by which I mean streets, drainage, recreation ground, and so on. If you can just imagine, right now, the corporation of Diego Martin gets less than that for its development program. It gets less than $40 million. Can you imagine if they now double the amount of money available to them? No longer will they have an excuse. The old tired excuse, you saw it in the video. We have no money. No longer would they have that. So for you paying $40 a month, you can now get your roads repaired, your drains cleaned, your recreation grounds upgraded, and we're moving beyond that into the maintenance of community facilities, community centers, schools, and so on. So no longer will there be this excuse, we have no money. And what that does, it brings things close to home, because you can now query, because the corporation now have to report to you, the citizens, the residents of the area, on what they spend the money on. They have to report to you. That's in the law too. So you can go to the statutory meetings and you can demand answers. You collected $5 million or you collected $10 million in property tax. What did you do with it? So it's a completely new era of local government. I hope that answers the question, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now, I want to take you back to the woman I mentioned in Covine. When she was living there at the time in Covine as a 17-year-old girl, her transportation was a donkey. The people in Covine who she lived with, her parents, were paying their land and building taxes. Might have been a few couple dollars, might even be $2 or $10. But in that era, the transportation was a donkey. The road was not paved. There was no service to pick up your garbage in the way it is being done now, and so on. And then if you come a little closer, a little later, to the early days of Diamond Vale, there was no highway down to Diamond Vale, but it came later on with development. What is happening to you now, what is being explained to you now as responsible citizens and people who are not stupid, but people who are genuinely invested in your development for yourself and your children and your neighborhood, is that you are the generation that accepted the borough status. You are the generation that now has available to you the highway, the overpass, the housing around, and all of that. We are currently engaged as part of your development in building that really needed new piece of road between Westmall, the Western Main Road, and the Diego Martin Valley, where you can drive and turn very safely and go up, down, and across on a modern intersection. This is what you have now. And therefore you, the cell phone generation, where you could have your life on this thing, you could even pay the $40 a month on it. That's you. So stop pretending that you are the lady from Covine at the turn of the century, last century, where the transportation was a donkey and employment was at the cocoa estate and nobody went to Port of Spain except to go to the hospital. The Diego Martin of 2023 is a different picture, and the responsibility is yours. It's yours. Our political opponents believe that we are afraid to talk to you about that tax. So they feel that once you mention the word tax, oh God, PNM lost the election because nobody, of course nobody likes to pay tax. But you understand that it is a revenue stream to which you contribute and you get back something for it. You pay income tax, those of you who are employed, and those of you who are earning less than $7,000 a month, you don't pay at all. One of the things that this government did in its early days was to increase the level of earnings which did not attract taxes in the country. So once you're earning $7,000 or less, we said your income is tax-free. That means we left more of your money in your hand. People at the lower earning scale. At the top of the scale, we increased the tax on banks because the banks were doing pretty well and earning a good profit. And we said in this situation, the banks could pay a bit more. So the whole question of the land and building taxes, which they call property taxes, is the same thing. The government of the 2010 to 2015 period decided that they would not collect that tax. And that was their policy, that was their politics. But what I want you to know in Diego Martin is that at the end of their term, they said the waiver is now ended. They said that. They ended the waiver, meaning that the law now comes back into force for the collection of the tax. We came in as the new government, meeting the law in force, and set about to collect your tax. I'm sure many of you would have seen the lines that were out at the revenue office of people who were beating the deadline to pay the tax. You know what they did, the opposition? They took the government to court to try to prevent the same tax that they approved just before they went out in September. A few months later, they were in the court asking the court to shut it down. But the court couldn't and didn't do that. The court asked that it be reviewed, and what the Minister of Finance just told you there is basically what the court asked to be done for and with a law that exists and is the law in Trinidad and Tobago. That's as simple as it is. So we spent the last few years complying with the court instructions, and we are now ready to operationalize a new arrangement where we, by the amendments and the creation of the law that we did in the Parliament, much of it has not yet been proclaimed. And what we are asking you to do in this election is, if you support the idea of a modern local government system with modern management, increased responsibility, increased resources, building up your neighborhood to have Diego Martin grow from the donkey and the horse and buggy into the 21st century, that you are part of this modernization and you are supporting local government reform. The consultation across the Trinidad came away with an overwhelming support for what has been planned. We are saying that once we proceed with the management improvement that we are talking about, you will receive this revenue stream in your borough from your own property owners, because if you don't own property, you have no property tax to pay. It's as simple as that. If you own property of low value, you pay a couple $100. If you have property of high value, you pay a bit more. But that, a lot of people paying a small amount will create a decent sized pool of funds for your borough to now continuously treat with your neighborhood needs. And that is an improvement in the quality of your life. It will also bring opportunities for employment, because you will have more money to spend in the borough. Before, you would have been limited to only what the Minister of Finance allocates to you during the year from the national budget. But now, the Minister of Finance just told you the mathematics of it. You could double the amount of money that the borough is going to be spending. And this is a good time to say to you here in Diego Martin, as I'm saying to the entire country, having money and bad spending it does not an improvement make. Because you, running this borough now, which we expect to have greater responsibility, better management, and more money, you have to make sure that the money is spent on the people's business. And one of those businesses is a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. That's what you have to do. Because getting more money and not spending it properly does not change and does not bring progress and development. But we expect that our borough, in its spanking new headquarters down there, in as accessible as you could get in this Diego Martin region, good things are going to happen there. When you go through that building, you will see provision is made for a number of professional services being housed in the most modern of environment. But I want you, when you go to visit your borough headquarters, to ask them to show you the technical side of it if they are so minded. Because we are here talking about digital arrangements where a database should exist. This modern borough of Diego Martin, what does the future hold for you? Building a database, as the minister just told you, about a database of all the houses in the borough. That's good information to have. Because then you would know who's there, how many, and know them exactly. And if there are programs for home improvement, and people look to you as they look now to the Ministry of Housing, a program of home improvement could be one of the kinds of responsibility that the central government could pass on, either all or some of it, to local government. You don't have that now. The Minister of Education is here. She will tell you how much money is spent on school repairs. We have a number of schools in the Diego Martin area. A well-run borough could take responsibility for school maintenance. We could start with the primary schools in the first instance. And as we build up the management system and the experience and the database, we could move to take on responsibility for the secondary school system. We have a number of sporting fields, not the least of which is one of the finest sporting grounds in the country in our Diego Martin, North Diego Martin ground. There's nothing to prevent at some point in the not too distant future that the Diego Martin borough be responsible for that facility. So you don't have to wait for somebody from somewhere in the center of the country, in the city of Port of Spain, to come and do repairs or to be responsible for securing and protecting that facility. We have other facilities that would require assistance of one kind or another. Why is it that the health centers, their maintenance, their cleansing, their cleaning, which is now being managed by whom? Certainly not the Diego Martin Corporation or the borough, is being managed by the Ministry of Health from somewhere else. So what we're seeing for the future is bringing home to you responsibility, where you are responsible for your own facilities with the rights, responsibility, and resources in your hand. And that is where we talk about progress, because we've brought that home to you. It's called devolution in government. The central government has given up to you certain responsibilities that central government now holds. And there are people who believe that this would never have come, because they were telling themselves that the PNM will never do that because it involves giving up responsibility. But giving up responsibility to who? To you. And it wouldn't make you any less PNM people. It will make you more, because you will see progress that you had not seen before. And we have confidence in our people because we've seen it operate elsewhere. When you go abroad and you travel to other people's country. Why do you think they come back here and say, oh, it's so nice and the place is so nice and everything working and this? You know why? It's because in most instances, what you would have seen is the local government at work. That's what you would have seen. You go to Florida, you go to Texas, you go to Atlanta, what you see in there is the local government. And one of the key things in making those systems work is that those in office at the executive level are required by law to consult with those of you who elected them. And that is in our new arrangement. That's in our new arrangement. You don't just elect people and leave them to run and do what they please. They have to report to you. And you then would have a responsibility to go to where the reporting is taking place and have your voice heard. And the priorities that will take place in your borough, you are involved in it. And in that way, who you elect is very important. Then you manage, you observe their performance, and you know who to keep and who to send out. That is progress. So ladies and gentlemen, you are being called upon at this time to do what we have been promising to do for years. Years. After all the talk, after all the consultation, after all the hours in the parliament, fortunately, there was a PNM majority, and the PNM majority got the law passed. And we are asking you in this election to stand with what the parliament has passed, which is a law that says, go and reform local government for the people. That's what we're asking you to do. So if you have never voted before in local government, and if you have never voted for the PNM before, this is a good time to do it, to vote for the PNM or to vote for local government, because you are voting for something tangible. You're voting for a future which you can see, which you can understand, which you are in control of. There are other people who are playing games, because as far as they're concerned, election is about getting office for them personally. Their agenda is personal office. Our agenda has been and continues to be how we can improve the quality of your lives by strengthening your governance in your neighborhood. You have to ask yourself. You would have seen an ad in the newspaper, on the TV. I saw it right before I came down here, where a number of the UNC voices who spoke during the consultation period spoke glowingly in support of this whole initiative that was to come. So you have to ask yourself, how come when it got to the parliament, all of a sudden is no, we're not supporting it? And how come now that it's election time to vote in support of it, you convert the whole campaign into gun, putting up candidates with gun in their hand, putting up candidates with gun in their pocket. We know we have a crime problem. We don't need them to tell us that and to show us on TV somebody killing somebody and the gory details and stressing you out with a reenactment of a murder. While at the same time they're saying that if you put them into office, they will reverse everything that we do. What kind of madness is that? You're not supporting it, but your campaign is, if the PNM does it, when we come into office, we are going to reverse it. Anybody wants to go backwards in life? What your grandparents were being asked to do is different to what your parents being asked to do, which is different to what you are being asked to do. And when your grandchildren take over, it might be quite different. They might be going up and take a space trip every now and then, because the planes are to fly today. The first flight of civilian passengers went into space today. You could book a ticket. It only costs a little bit, $480,000 US. Right? But so don't put yourself in that situation where progress is being obstructed simply for naked politics and the politics of personal accomplishment. Them getting elected, if you put God out your thoughts, they would accomplish their life's ambition to get elected. As far as they're concerned, case closed. I'm elected, I want to win. And to win, they will do anything and say anything. And by anything, I mean anything. Look at this nonsense about fabricating this story about inheritance tax. Where that came from? It came from the opposition leader fabricating a lie that there is to be an inheritance tax. So if you inherit your father's property or your grandfather's property, you have to pay this tax. It's not true. It's simply not true. And you told them a million times it's not true. They're not concerned about that. We're campaigning on that. And to me, that should tell you what they will do in office. Because if you could lie to me so openly, and then after you do that, you ask me to marry you, I have a problem. You know? And the reason why they have to resort to that kind of behavior is because they do not genuinely commit to your development or the country's development for that matter. Why is it that today Trinidad and Tobago's final court of appeal is not the Caribbean Court of Justice on Charlotte Street? Why? It is simply because when they went and made a case along with our other CARICOM colleagues that it's time for us to get out of the Privy Council because only the privileged few goes there, you know. To get to the Privy Council, you're starting off with £100,000 just to go through a door in London and a flight of another $20,000 to get to London. And it's only those who could pay to get there or pay lawyers to go there had the Privy Council as their final court of appeal, you know. And what these worthless lawyers have been doing is using people like Ravi Balgobin to harass the government, right? And if the government loses, they make money, and if the government wins, Ravi is a man of straw. That is the idea of Privy Council. And they so believe in it that yesterday, two of them were lying on me and telling me to my face, if I go to court with them, the Privy Council will decide it. So as far as they're concerned, they have no interest in the local court system, the Privy Council. And I'm saying to you, it's a kind of politics that you should discourage by ensuring that they lose their deposits in every seat. Because here we are talking about development. We work out a plan and a program for development. And all they could do is stand in the way and threaten you with dismantling it if you put God out your thoughts and put them into office. Ladies and gentlemen, from me personally, to you here in Diego Martin, I have had the best of both worlds, and I'm thankful to you for it. You've given me the opportunity to serve you at the highest level. And while doing so, I had the opportunity to work with some of the best people. I worked with Colin Burt, I worked with Ken Valley, I'm working with Simon de Nobrega, I work with Amy Brown, because we are Diego Martin, and Diego Martin is the best part of the country. And we want to be an example to the rest of the country of what can be had if we focus and be reasonable. Nothing good comes easy, and without sacrifice, much is lost. But once you know where you're going, you put one foot in front of the other, and you're bound to get there. Ladies and gentlemen, I am talking to you about development, because I know how we develop this area. When I came into Diego Martin as your MP, Caranash had one school. All the boys and girls were going in that school. School overcrowded. Children affected, opportunities being lost. Today, we have one of the finest boys' schools. We have a Carnage Girls' School and a Carnage Boys' School. When I came to you at another time, in Diego Martin Boys RC was an old house with the roof low over your head so. Inside the school, dark, dark, dark. With time, we got rid of that, and Diego Martin Boys RC is one of the finest primary schools in the country. And in case you think that was enough, across the street, the finest and latest in Diego Martin is what we've added to the Diego Martin Girls RC. It's a pleasure. I like to go and visit these primary schools because that is where you meet the people who love their MP. These primary school children. When I go into Diego Martin Girls RC and to see where they are now from where they were before, I see development, I see progress. Straight across the road from us here, the overpass was never there. We built the highway and we built an overpass. And some of the finest housing is on one side of the overpass. We have making progress. Let us continue to make progress. And your involvement in this aspect of progress in local government is an involvement that you don't have in central government, but which you have more of it. You're collecting your garbage. I don't even know if you know who collects our garbage. But what I do know is every election, we have garbage problems. Every election in this constituency, all of a sudden we can't collect garbage. Well, we're going to put an end to that because Diego Martin Corporation Diego Martin Corporation, the borough of Diego Martin, will have the authority to hire whoever you want to hire. And because we have hills, we have plains, we have valleys, we will organize our transport and our cleansing to suit our topography and our geography. You will have your borough police, who will know more about who is engaging in criminal conduct in your community more than the police in the borough, who will work alongside the national police to ensure that we improve our safety and our security. And there are a lot of programs that a well-run borough can get involved in, which are now not even thought about. I have here with me the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, operating all the whole ministry for the whole of Trinidad from Port of Spain. And I think the districts are, you still in counties, right? County this and county that. We want to talk to the borough of Diego Martin. And there are a lot of things. Once you have a database, which can be the basis on which you determine the needs of the people within the borough, a number of the services being provided now from central government for the family services can be provided by the local government authority. You transfer the resources to the authority, and the authority from its database will know who exactly they need to service. That must be better than having to wait for a nameless, faceless public servant somewhere else looking after your needs. And of course, if you are at the end of the line, you don't know who to talk to. You don't know who to call. But once your local government has that responsibility, you know who and they're in your hand because you put them there. That is the authority that will come to you. And it comes in increments as the management system strengthens. They take on more responsibility. You take some from social development, you take some from housing, you take some from some other ministry that is doing something else because you have the capacity. And all that would be doing is giving you greater control of your own local district. Your streets, your drains, your road, your community centers, and all of these things. Right now, one of the problems you're having across Trinidad, I don't know if you're having it here in Diego Martin, I hope not, is the whole question of management of those community centers. We built some fine facilities around the country, and we're getting complaints that the management is a problem because some people have an assumption as to what the management should be. And some people are even excluding certain people in the community from using it. But if we get to the point where local government is responsible for managing those facilities, and there are guidelines as to how they should manage them, the guidelines will be set by the central government or even by the borough itself, then that whole issue will disappear, and greater use of the facilities and the investments could be made. We're no longer taking part in the major cultural event of Better Village. This borough of Diego Martin could take it upon itself to ensure that we return to the good side of Better Village, or have your own programs or similar programs to develop art and culture in your district. We're talking here about going back to strengthen West Indies cricket. You know how we want to do that? We want to encourage school cricket and club cricket to generate a larger population of people who are actually playing the game in the country. Maybe local government has a role to play in that. Certainly, in preparing and keeping the grounds ready for the youngsters, that is what you can do. Local government can become a booming driver of all these possibilities if you believe that local government can really play that role. And how you express that belief? You have faith and confidence in the outcome of the consultation. Trust in the government that take it upon itself to ensure that the consultation wasn't a waste of time. And in your community people that say together, we can do this, we have confidence in ourselves, we can do this. So, let's do this.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley, for that very interesting and what we hope to be a very stimulating conversation, discourse. Of course, we would have had the video, we would have had a presentation here by Minister Imbert, and we move on now, ladies and gentlemen, to our question and answer phase, where we hope to generate this conversation with you here in Diego Martin, with the national community, with Dr. Rowley. Before we move forward, please allow me to establish some ground rules. We have a mic here in the middle, and we request that persons interested in asking a question that you stand up, you give your name and location, whether it be by constituency or region. We ask that you limit the question to 1 minute and be very direct. We are also asking that you limit it to one question per person. I know persons tend to give very long preambles, so we are asking that you also limit those preambles again and be very direct and forthright in your questions. Also, most importantly, we are asking that you be very respectful and courteous when asking your questions. If I must intervene as moderator to limit and get back on track, I will definitely do so. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue before us is local government reform. We have a local government election, and of course there are many issues coming out of it. I know Dr. Rowley would have presented as well too. So we are asking that we limit the topic to these issues and keep it really on the topic of the day, topic of the season, topic of this election. So ladies and gentlemen, without further delay, let me open the floor to have questions asked. The mic again is in the middle. You could rise and come or make an orderly line behind the mic. The floor is open, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, sir. You could state your name and location and ask your question.
My name's Chris Boothman. I am from the Carranarge area. My question for Dr. Rowley is, what will local government reform deliver for small businesses?
Well, as it stands now, moving into the reform period, there isn't a direct relationship between local government and the creation of a small business. It's about creating an environment in which small business is encouraged and can prosper. Because if local government reform brings about all the activities that I mentioned earlier on, somebody, some people, some businesses will be required to be the actual deliverer of the various goods and services. So the reform will encourage the fostering of local government. New businesses will develop, existing businesses will grow, and that is what local government reform will do for small business.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. Sir, you could ask your question, name and location.
I am Lesedi Felix of La Perita Avenue, Diego Martin. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister, Trinidad and Tobago.
Good night.
I wish to congratulate you and your team for the marvelous work you have done, the extensive consultation in order to get all the pertinent information to put together this fantastic local government reform, which will allow the municipalities to acquire more funding to be able to better manage and serve their burgesses and their communities. So I wish to congratulate you. My question is, with all these additional finances, what mechanisms and safety precautions are in place to hold persons accountable for every cent that we receive?
Well, as a part of this management rebirth and expansion and elevation that I'm talking about, an integral part of that will be accountability in the system, where authorities for spending money would be clear, auditing and reporting would be an integral part of the operations, and that is how you operate an organization or a business to ensure that money is applied where it is authorized to be. Okay? But it's going to be an integral part of the management upgrade that we're talking about. Okay? You would see, I suspect more people, more skilled people, like for example audit and accounts. These are skills that you would need because you're managing now a bit more resources, and you want to make sure you do more with what you have, and those professional skills which are not now easily available within the corporation. And then you go to managing project management, right? Whatever projects you're doing, you have to have proper project management personnel to make sure that the people are on the job, that the job is being done according to how it ought to be done, that the engineering is sound, and that the product and the outcome is worthy of the expenditure that you put out, right?
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. We have another question here.
Good night.
Good night.
My name is Ishmael Taruba. Like down south, I'm actually from Shogunat, but I travel all the way here to see my Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Welcome to Diego Martin.
Yes, sir. And before Mr. Nanla rush me, one question. Would this local government reform continue to trust in upgrading the corporations into boroughs and also the boroughs like Shogunas and Arima to eventually be upgraded to cities? And one more question. Would this local government reform fix the revenues of the corporations and the boroughs when those on the other side complain that they have no money and they have to send the Honorable Minister to put them in their place about the issues? And before I leave, Honorable Prime Minister, I was misled. I am 23 years old. In the first two elections that I could have voted, but I cannot stand within a party with people like Jack and those allegations. Embarrassing Trinidad. And violent terms like light them up. I cannot stand with that. But you, Dr. Rowley, I would just like to thank you for being the best leader to lead us through the COVID pandemic. Great is the PNM! And I would like
Thank you.
I was so enthralled with our friend from Chaguanas that I've lost contact with the first two questions. Yeah. What were the two questions again? Just mention them again, jog my memory.
Yes, sir. That's concerning with the trust to continue the upgrade.
Oh, right, upgrading,
Yes,
right.
And that's the issue with the revenues, so that we could finally put to rest those on the other side complaining about lack of funds.
Good, I got them. I got you. Yeah. Those incidentally, those two questions are very fundamental, very important. One, firstly, the answer to your question is yes. And you would have seen it happen. You would have seen San Fernando, over time, move from the borough of San Fernando to the city of San Fernando. So we know what's happening there. You would have seen Point 14 move from a corporation to a borough. So if the local burgesses are so minded to raise their status and take on the responsibilities that will come, I have no doubt that we will see additional cities as we go forward. Whether it is Arima, Chaguanas, Diego Martin, but the next step in terms of elevation is to become a city, and of course, there are certain things that go with that. But we did move San Fernando, and today I'm sure, as a matter of fact, I heard our political opponents saying that they will win the borough of San Fernando. I suspect they will do that, but we're going to win the city of San Fernando.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. And ladies and gentlemen, I wish to just remind you, keep the questions.
Raised, are you hearing me? The other question that he raised was the whole question of the revenues. How come, or do we expect our opponents in districts that the PNM is not in control of to be saying that they don't have any resources? Well, they're not well known for speaking the truth. Because you may recall a few months ago, when they always try to make the government look bad, make the country look bad, make it look as if we're in a hellhole, you would have seen one of the corporations in South on television a few nights, night after night, complaining that they couldn't do anything for their burgesses because they had no diesel to put in their vehicles. They couldn't pick up the garbage. They couldn't do this because they had no money. The Minister of Finance came on television and said, that chairman who is saying that has been instructed by the ministry to spend the money that they have in the corporation called unspent balances, which require ministerial approval. They got the ministerial approval to spend the money, but they refuse to spend the money to be able to say that the government is discriminating against the people in that north. That's what they do. As a matter of fact, people coming from the UNC to the PNM now telling us that what they have been told by the political leadership is not to do anything even if they have the resources, so that the people will complain and they will be able to blame the government. And as they blame the government will be weakened until the next election and they will win the next election. Could you imagine that? That's what's going on. We saw it. So the question is, will they use the resources that will come their way? And the answer that I will give to that, it is entirely up to their burgesses. If they want to elect people who will go and behave like that and elect them again, it is a democratic system. They are free to choose their representatives. But if they want people who will make full use of those resources, they be careful not to elect people who will behave like that.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. And just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, if we could keep the questions very direct and concise. So we follow on, ma'am, your name and location.
A pleasant good night to Dr. Rowley.
Good night.
And welcome home. All right. Hyacinth Bartholomew, Diego Martin West. And Dr. Rowley, the question is, Dr. Rowley, there's plenty of things happening in Diego Martin. We have a stadium, we have a flyover. With the reform you're bringing, how you see this impacting people like me, people in Carenage, people in Covine, people in Scorpion, and in the whole of Diego Martin? Thank you.
All right, you've called the names of some communities that are at the end of the line in Scorpion, the Carenage, and the hills around. You stand to benefit the most because your needs are more basic, and in many instances, in the current arrangement of limited resources, you are the ones who get left for last or get left behind. Many of you who live in the hills, you have problems getting the quality of road and drainage that you need, and where you have it, the maintenance is usually substandard or infrequent. If the corporation has more resources, as local government will bring, the reform will bring, because of the component of the tax that we're having, it means that the corporation will be better able to serve you. The people who have good, strong roads usually don't have a road as their issue. They might have a pothole as their problem. But where some of you are, you need more basic things. So the more resources and the more efficient the corporation is, the better for you, because you then will get your turn of being serviced faster and more consistently. So local government will do more for local government reform, local government transformation will do more for you than it will do for some other people.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. We'll move on to the other question.
Good evening, Dr. Rowley and
evening.
everybody else. My name is Stacey Esnad. I'm a resident from the Bagatelle Blue Basin District. My question is, I've heard talk about the Venezuelan dragon deal. I don't know what that means for us, but there's a lot of talk about it. If we get through, how good will it be for the country and what will it mean?
Wow. I know I'm in Diego Martin when I get that question, right? Now again, the whole question of the dragon deal, we used to be an oil-producing country. And at one time, our oil refinery under Texaco was producing 240,000 barrels of oil, handling. The refinery was handling as much as 240,000 barrels of oil per day. Today, at the time when we came out of refining, that refinery was only being fed from local sources about 60,000 barrels, and we were importing over 100, sometimes 120,000 barrels a day. So we became an importer of oil to refine. And after a while, that business became too burdensome, too expensive, and we had to come out of it. That was the restructuring of Petrotrim. But before that, we had moved to becoming a gas-producing country, natural gas. That natural gas, in some cases, was associated with oil, and in other cases, was not associated, was just high-pressure gas without oil. And we started using that gas in the 70s. The policy was adopted to bring that gas from offshore, where most of it was, to onshore, and we started using that gas. Thankfully, because we had done that, with the reduction in the volume of oil, it was replaced by an increase in the amount of gas we were using, and gas then became the most important part of our economy. The PNM did that. The PNM made that change in a timely manner. So we then had, by the time we got to 2008, the best earnings this country ever had was that year with the good gas prices and good volumes. And today, we are still more dependent on gas, natural gas, than on anything else to sustain our economy. But look at what's happening. Because we have been extracting this gas from our gas fields for the last 25 or 30 years, the volumes that are available coming to us from the gas fields have been reduced over time. So even though today we can handle about 4.1 billion cubic feet of gas per day, we are only handling about 2.8 billion because we don't have the production levels that we could handle coming from our fields. So that being the case, we started looking for gas outside of our border. And outside of our border, fortunately, in Venezuela, they do have gas fields that they are not using and are not likely to be used for quite some time. Because in drilling for oil, they found gas and the gas is lying there. And one of those gas fields is called the Dragon Field. It is near to us, off the Bocas. It's only 17 kilometers away. And there are two other bigger fields behind it, which they're owned by Venezuela, but we need some of that gas. So we went and negotiated with Venezuela to have access to that gas, to go on the field. It's a proven field. Drill on it, take the gas, pipe it to the Hibiscus platform, and take it down to Point Lisas. That should have been happening where the first gas should have been with us by 2019, early 2019. Everything was in place for that. And then the Americans went and put sanctions on Venezuela and cut off Venezuela from the rest of the Western world, and we were forbidden to do that with Venezuela. Otherwise, we would have got into serious trouble with our major trading partner, which is America, so that stymied it. So the Dragon Field arrangement is very important to us because once it gets going, if it gets going as we hope it would do, it would bring gas to Trinidad, where we now have capacity to handle gas, but don't have the amount of gas that we can handle. So we are, those of you who are praying people, keep on praying. Because if we ever get access to that Dragon gas, it's a gas field that we can use the gas, but it is in somebody else's country. But in international commerce, that's normal. We pay them for the gas, we pipe it here, and we use it to produce petrochemicals, to produce LNG, and we get money from that. So we hope to increase our business with Venezuela by way of a gas commercial arrangement. The only thing that stands in the way now is the American sanctions against Venezuela. And we hope that those don't last forever. We negotiated with the Americans for the last 2 years to get them to relieve us from that sanction pressure. Well, they eventually did that, but they put a condition on the operations which the Venezuelans are not accepting. So we're still negotiating, and we hope we'll come to a point where we can have an arrangement which will meet the Venezuelan needs. And at that stage, we'll then have a clearance to proceed to extract the gas from the Dragon Field. Great question, thanks for it.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. We now move on to another question. You could give us your name and location, ma'am.
Hi, good night. I am Nicole George. I reside at Lansmitton Road, Carenage. Good night, Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley.
Good night.
My question to you is, apart from the benefits you have stated, what are the other impacts of the reform that us, the citizens, can expect?
Well, the benefits are that the whole country, it says, it is said that a rising tide lifts all boats. And we're not only talking to you here in Diego Martin, we're talking to the whole of the country, including Tobago. That if we embark upon this quantum leap and the development and the success that we are anticipating comes with it, the whole of Trinidad and Tobago will change, the tempo will change, the quality of life in neighborhoods will change. Our young people will be growing up in a more positive environment. We expect fewer and fewer of them will turn to crime and criminality. We expect more of them will see that with their own effort and the efforts of their teachers and their parents, they can get skills. Most of them who are now wanting employment but do not have the skills will have the drive to go and get those skills, to become good contributors, to participate in the economy, to raise a family. And that is what is going to happen to the whole country. Here in Diego Martin now, I don't know if you all are aware, how many of you are aware, as part of the national effort to increase our food security, we are currently down in Chagaramas building some shade houses where we will grow high quality vegetables under shade controlled conditions alongside our friends from Guyana. Some of our young people are in that program. They've gone to Guyana, got some training, see the exposure. Some Guyanese will be coming here to help us, and we do this cross-fertilization of our young people, and we are providing good opportunity for good jobs and for good entrepreneurship for young people to go into business of that nature. So all of these things would be an improvement in life in Trinidad and Tobago. Local government reform is one of those plans.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. We will have a question from the audience here, and then I will turn to a social media question as well. So, ma'am, you could give us your name and location.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aliyah Alexis, and I am from Rich Plain Road, Diego Martin. So my question, as Dr. Rowley was just speaking on the agribusiness enterprises, and I am new to the agri-entrepreneurial sector, I was wondering, how can the development of the cooperation advance between local government units and see locally or regionally active business entities in the small and medium enterprises sector be activated to increase the scale of development for pro-environmental, green entrepreneurship, and eco-innovation? I mean, he already touched on it in his previous answer, but it's just a, expansion on that.
Well, I don't want to limit such a broad question to local government. What you're touching on there is basically a real direction of national development. You talk about the environment. We have to be very protective of the environment, but not strangle ourselves by being overly sensitive. We have to, in a common sense way, carry out development while being cognizant of the need for environmental respect and protection. And of course, in terms of entrepreneurs, a lot of people have ideas, but they don't know where to start to operationalize those ideas. But if they get a little help or enter into a program that gives them a start, in many instances, those ideas can grow into real businesses. So there are a number of operations now in the government. We have a Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, which is focusing on exactly that, which is introducing new ideas, new concepts, and creating opportunities for people who otherwise might have just stood up and feel hopeless. I can't do this, I can't get that, what can I do? And the world is falling on my shoulder. But now, we have thousands of young people, many of them now in the Diego Martin area, who are seeing and participating in opportunities that allow them to even start as entrepreneurs doing something with some support from the state, hoping to grow and become stronger on their own 2 feet. And small business, as they say, could become big business. And we are encouraging that. So basically, this is a period where we should and could look to a future of opportunities bringing prosperity to all of us, especially those for whom the opportunity seems so far away before. but with the new programs and policies and support bases, we could see that those opportunities can become reality.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rowley, sir. Just before we get back to questions from the audience, I have a question from social media. Of course, this is airing live on television, on social media, and we also have the listening audience. This is from Lyndon Simmons from the constituency of Princestown, and his question is, what redress, other than an election in 4 years down the road, would the Burgesses have if councillors do not carry out the mandate of accountability for the funding entrusted in their care and in local government reform?
Well, the only redress, if they break the law in doing whatever they do, then the law is there to take its course, but I don't think he's talking about that. If the councillors are, if you elect people who are uncaring, incompetent, even lazy, not excited by the prospect of working for you, if those are the people that you elect, we don't operate a system of recall at this time. I don't know if in the future that will happen, but I don't recommend it. But you just have to be sure that if those are their attributes and that is their record, that you don't re-elect them. And sometimes by you participating and aggressively demanding service, by participating in the community outreaches like your town halls and so on, you can move some of these people who otherwise may have been unproductive. You can move them and they themselves might discover that they can do more than they really thought they could have done. So that interaction between you and the people you elect is important at the local level in particular, and all the way up to Parliament. Dr. Brown can tell you that.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. We will move to a question here. Sir, your name and location, please.
Good night. My name is Johnny Joseph Fletcher from San Juan. Good night, Dr. Rowley.
Good night, Johnny.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We appreciate all that you are doing for the country, and you're doing a great job. I want to say the only Prime Minister that in front of you is the father of the nation. So continue doing the great job that you're doing, right? I also want to say a special good night to my MP from St. Anne's, the Honorable Dolly Gaspy. She's doing a great job in my area as well, right? I have two quick questions. One is this local government reform being used as a mandate to determine whether property tax would be implemented? Right, that's my first question. My other question is to stray a little bit away from that and to deal with the national instrument. As we know, this month is the month of the steel ban. And also tomorrow, thanks to the president of the Pancho and Bago, we're going to honor, the world is going to honor as Pan Day tomorrow. Not Baze Pan Day, Pan Day, right? Right? But what I find personally is that we don't give recognition to our national instrument. And that is why you find other countries trying to claim it. These are treasure that we give the world. And we have to treasure what the master has given us, because this is what shows us to be Trinidadians and Tobagonians, right? I wish that, I know it had the deliberations whereby you all was going to take it to Parliament to make it the national instrument. I hope that when you all complete that discussion, that we will see the pan on a national, something, not only $20. $20 too small to represent the pan, right? I want to recommend that the pan is even worthy of being put on the national flag. You know why? It represents all of us, across creed, race, class, everything. Pan is what we give the world. And if we don't wake up, one of these days we might wake up. Japan only do it the other day. One of these days we go wake up and find somebody else. And all the great work that the great men from before, Spree Simon, Eddie Manette, and even those like Ken Professor Fillmore.
Okay, sir, if you could move on
they're going to thing.
So I don't want to cut you off, but can you move on to the other question there, please? Okay.
Thank you very much for that. In New York, there's a small committee. I met them, yes, New York. I met them a few years ago, and that little group, they had made pins, and they were pushing the idea of pan on the flag. They were asking that Trinidad and Tobago, we put on our national flag the emblem of a pan. So it's not an unknown concept. The question is whether it will get enough support. I don't know if anybody would want to interfere with the red, white, and black. It is splendor as it is now. But it may very well be, if we were now designing a flag, that idea might have had greater currency. But we are certainly happy that the United Nations has put World Pan Day. It means that very many people will be paying, and on that particular day, very many people would either talk about, participate, or look at flag. We shouldn't feel too threatened by the fact that other people are in fact getting involved in using the pan as a musical instrument. I mean, the Spanish didn't keep the guitar and the cuatro to themselves. It went all over the world. The Germans didn't keep saxophones to themselves. If you have a musical instrument, it will eventually travel around the world. And we are just to understand that while other people are using it, let's not get upset about that. Let us make sure that when we are using it, we are using it in the best possible way and doing so continuously as to not to lose the heritage. I don't think we are in any danger of losing that, because the enthusiasm for pan in Trinidad and Tobago, notwithstanding what is being said, the enthusiasm is still quite high. And what we need to do is to ensure that we maximize its involvement in our cultural expressions. And like, for example, I, for one, I would want to encourage, and I'm anxious to see Pan Trinbago bring back the period of pan playing classical music. That I used to thoroughly enjoy that. And it's something that I would like to see come back as part of the calendar of pan events. So tomorrow is Pan Day. Pan Day. So I look forward to seeing some of you on the promenade somewhere. There'll be pan in Woodford Square. I think there are about 8 or 10 bands will be in Woodford Square. It's an opportunity to participate and to be a part of it and to enjoy it. That's what we do here in Trinidad and Tobago. And the very many young people who are so talented and expressing that talent tells me that pan is in good hands, and we are building the facilities. We've just built a fine facility for Despas in Port of Spain, and in a few weeks' time there'll be another facility that will be, news will come of another facility, and the Port of Spain will be the home of pan, the city of pan, the place where you can go, and the management, again, we're talking local government. We can have events in corporations which feature steel band productions as cultural evenings, cultural expressions, create opportunities for people to play and display their talent. And if you are willing to pay a small fee to go to a good venue, to an evening of steel band music, it would be a wonderful thing, and those things will come with initiatives, with support, and the future is bright in all of these areas.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. We move on to another question from the audience. Sir, again, your name and location.
My name is Stephen Telesford. I'm from Coburn Road, and I'm part in Rich Plain. And
could you talk into the mic, please? Yeah.
My name is Stephen Telesford.
Right.
I'm from Coburn Road, and I'm part in Rich Plain. I work with the Prime Minister. You wasn't the Prime Minister as yet. By your house in Caranage. And I asked you, what about the election? And you said, is leave it up to the people. You remember that? I's Doc brother. I's Doc brother.
Whose brother?
Doc.
Doc brother, all right. Right.
And
You work by my house, right?
yes.
You're a tradesman, right?
And you come along by the dog house. You go along all right.
What trade? You're a tradesman, right?
Yeah, mason. Past mason, I could be contractor by again.
Ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman, he and his brothers built a drain up in Covine. You almost go up there and see it without mechanical equipment. It is something to behold. Good workman.
But I want what I want to say now, they say you leave it up to the people. The people come and they vote here, you win once. People come again and they vote here, you win twice. Now you reach a half time now, 2.5 times now, we have reform. Right? The reform I want to see now is the Corbin and Rich Plain and Balance of Diego Martin concerning crime. Concerning crime.
Crime?
Yes. Because the people now, young people now, can go in the next district and get work. So we have to make a kind of reform to get them there. As a young contractor, you might have to give me some work to give some people some work to business of the house. Right? Then concerning the school now, we had the minister here who belongs to the school. Then she put up she sucks and have this like a long time. You know how it is? You're afraid of combination, you're going to learn a trade, so you're going to come out and mason too. Right? And concerning that, I would like to see some married. We ain't seen married that were causing the crime for me. You see people ain't married. Right? In Covey Road, I want to make it short. What I say here, I listen to TV, everybody say all kind of things. I never heard to talk about this. In Covey Road, my mother made 10 children, 8 boys and 2 girls. We mean we had 10 houses and 10 of you married. Right? We passed. So I would like to see all of you married here, and I would like to see.
Okay.
I want to see you married to the opposition in love, and 2 of them will be in one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well. You young people here tonight, you have got a lecture on the attributes of family life. Go and choose good partners, and we look forward to many weddings in Diego Martin. There's a lot to be said for that, and he gave you a good discourse. But one point he made that we should be concerned about. You see that whole question about borderline, where criminals are setting the pace and determining who can go where. That is something to be discouraged, and you have to discourage young people from participating in it. One hand, don't clap. It's happening across 2 hands. And while it may be a small number of people who are engaging in enforcing those criminal rules, it is having a deleterious effect on the entire community. It is destroying the comfort and the safety and the security of the community. And I want to go back to the point of saying, at the end of the day, when you get to the root of those behavior, it comes down to the family. Because every family where there's somebody in that family engaging in that, the family knows who is doing it, saw it developing, and it's a breakdown of society that ends up like that. Breakdown. And it offers us nothing good. It may be something good for the person who is guarding the block to sell more drugs and handle more gun. But the general community that is being affected, it is all bad. So it is something, as part of the improvement in our safety and security, that we have to look at. And it also has that component. Do not encourage, well, let me put it the other way around. Discourage any person associated with you who you have any influence over. Discourage them from participating in that. It does not end well for them or for the community.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. We have another question here in the audience. Again, name and location, ma'am.
My name is Aisha Jackman Archer. I am from Lansmeter, Caranage. Bless a good night to you, Honorable Prime Minister.
Good night.
The question I have for you is, what are the roles of local government in terms of, excuse me, I don't have on my glasses, so I straighten my eyes. Oh, all right, so let me start over. What are the roles of local government in terms of activating entrepreneurship, of innovation in the terms of developing cooperation with local businesses?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Okay, let me read it over. What are the roles of local government in terms of activating entrepreneurship in innovation in the terms of developing cooperation with local businesses?
If I understand what you're asking me is how we can encourage entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
And what role local government
what
can play in it?
In local businesses?
As I said earlier, if local government has more resources and is taking on more responsibilities, you will require more instances of persons and businesses to participate in providing the services of that responsibility. And therefore, that's one area where an entrepreneur who sees an opportunity to do something that they want to do. I mean, the lady who decides that people are gathering here to build something, and I better go there and sell some bacon shark or something, you get an idea. Or you could see young people doing certain things and there's a service you want to offer. Because entrepreneurs usually set out, they want to offer something for sale. Or they have a skill to do something and they want to make it known that they can do certain things, and there are people who want that skill. So the more there is opportunity to spend money, to take responsibility, to discharge responsibilities, the more these opportunities will be there for entrepreneurs to have ideas and generate small business, which could grow as the business expands.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. We'll move on to another question again, ma'am.
Honorable Prime Minister, good night.
Good night.
Princess Williams, Pity Valley. As businesses will be benefiting from the local government reform, and these businesses will be hiring persons at minimum wage. I read in the newspapers that minimum wage will be going up. Is that true?
I don't know which paper you read, but that paper is very efficient, right? Today, I was asked that same question in a press conference I had at the Diplomatic Center. And what I did say is that they asked me whether, what was the government's view on the labor asking for a $30 minimum wage increase. I said that we are looking at adjusting the minimum wage, and that is a matter that the Minister of Finance may address when he comes to do his budget in September, depending on what situation we are in, and certainly knowing the needs of people who are on minimum wage, we are looking to see what the government could afford. You see, there are a lot of people on the government payroll in what you call make-work programs. And when the minimum wage is increased, because the government is such a large employer of these people, the wage bill in that program will automatically go up. So it is all dependent on what the government can afford. And also, while the large increase that they're requesting sounds good, if you do that, it will have an effect of making the services and the goods that they provide more expensive, and that will become a burden for the very same people. If inflation is driven by a high minimum wage, who suffers most through inflation? Is the same people who are the poor people who are earning the minimum wage. So you have to balance it. And I would join with you in hoping that the Minister of Finance could see it possible to make some adjustment. It certainly will not be as high as Labour is saying, but maybe it may, some kind of upward adjustment to allow you to have a few more dollars in your hand. But it all will be dependent on, one, what the government could afford, and what effect it would have on the private sector earnings. Because you don't want, if you increase minimum wage and people start laying off people because the labor is costing too much, or the cost of labor is causing the business to go out of business. You don't want that, because you're killing the goose that lays the golden egg. You have to balance it where the person earns more, but the business remains sustainable.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. Again, another question.
Good evening, Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, and everyone in the room.
Good evening.
I just want to ask you casually, firstly, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Wonderful. Sometimes I think we forget that we are people. I just want to encourage you. You were saying earlier that we should pray about the dragon field. I want you to know that there are many people, one being myself, that you're on my prayer agenda, the government ministers, and our nation.
Thank you very much.
So I want you to know that.
Thank you.
Just a few things really quickly. You know, it says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And you can tell your heart. I think I connected with you from your heart when you mentioned during the time of COVID, where persons were complaining, and you said, you know, yeah, they're complaining, they're making noise, but at least I'm hearing them. At least I'm hearing them. And that says that you're more interested in the fact that they're alive, even though they're saying the negative things that they were saying. So I just wanted to say that it says a lot about the heart that you have, and I want to commend you on that. Recently, I met Keyshawn Walcott and Hazley Crawford at the stadium, Commonwealth Games. All these children, we just came from there, and we thought that we'd come straight to here. So, and I said to them, thank you for your service, and I want to say that to you publicly. Thank you for your service to our nation.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, while I was conversing with one of the children today, it's as though she wasn't sure if you live in this country, where you live. And I think very often we forget that the importance of the children when it comes to our nation and understanding everything that's going on in our nation. And I think focus needs to be put on that. I see, as chairman of the West Indies Cricket Board, or whatever it is, you understand that it's important for working in the schools with the children. And I think even when it comes to politics, and not so much politics in the sense that we may consider it, educating the children is very important, because they do not understand a lot of things when it comes to even what we're doing now, even this period of local government elections. The young people, some of them they're not particularly interested in voting. They don't understand the importance of voting, and I think emphasis needs to be put on that. I'm glad that the Minister of Education is here, that we could really address education from the place of the children that, you know, are in our nation. I am almost 60, and it's just 2 years ago I probably started paying attention to politics, and paying attention because I know I'm assigned to pray for this nation. And I'm saying that because when I learned about legislative and all of that, I was probably at university. So I really would like the emphasis to be placed on the understanding of children when it comes to politics, how it impacts them as individuals, and so that they would get more involved, and when they're making decisions, they'd make it from a place of understanding. I think that's very important. And finally, I know the moderator is checking my time, and finally, I have a concern, and a few people may have it as well, when it comes to the way we do election, around election time. Yes, we like the noise and the trucks, etc., etc. To me, this particular election is significant when it comes to information. So I appreciate these sessions that are being conducted so persons can be educated and informed, because we all know that the mainstream media, whether it's the radio, the TV, the newspaper, do not promote the things that we need to hear or need to understand. We understand where that goes. So I think providing information, even when trucks are going around, what this is about, even extending the information from that place, I think it would go a long way, because sometimes people are turned off by the noise and the loud music and all the willy-willy that goes with it. I don't mean to say that it is all bad, but that is even though I came with my horn, by the way. But just to say that I think we need to revisit some of those things so that we can basically...
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you very much. In all that she said, there's something that strikes me. And the whole question is, how effectively are we educating our children? That question needs to be asked and answered. And I too have observed in my own life that when I was in primary school, a serious piece of education was imparted to me on matters of civics, which is the operations of the country, systems and who's doing it. That was taught in primary school. And at that time, we didn't have the technologies that we have now. But the technology then was a radio, and the whole school used to break for 15 minutes. There used to be a radio program where the entire school will stop whatever you're doing. It was called School Broadcasting Program, where programs were prepared with specific kernels of education. And I could tell you, I learned so much, and it prepared me in so many ways to step out of that primary school into a secondary school and on to university. It was such a foundation. The question that has to be asked is, what has replaced it? What has replaced it? And it may be an area that requires some conversation. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
David Berkeley, Degomartin Central. Dr. Rowley, every time there is an initiative for national development, these people just make a bacchanal. Every time. The Branlara Promenade, Common Entrance, National Insurance, every initiative in our independence. At that time, the Mika Bacchanal, Dr. Williams at the time had to beg them to come and talk. Every time, the smelter plant, on every occasion. My point is with respect to the reform. A lot of them who so-called make the money in this country and buy the big apartment in Miami, they paying the property tax. They're paying property tax in another country and putting up a the tax in theirs. I find that is so unfair. How does the people in yellow, who are the supporters of these people, they too would benefit from this reform? Why don't they call on the political leader to support the reform? They wouldn't do that. Dr. Rowley, I want you to stand your ground, because stand your ground. And stand your ground on these issues. And in another area that I wanted to stand your ground is this so-called ethics committee. I find it fast and out of place. And while they refer to them as being biased, I know they are politically aligned. When Duke was in Tobago saying the people with red flag and balize in the yard, nothing for them, and he carried out the threat and fire so many people, why the ethics committee and it have a Tobagonian on the ethics committee? Why she didn't come out and say something? I heard last night a political leader in this country saying that the red and the ready, they will be dead and bloody. That is talk for the police. That is talk for the United Nations to protect us. Why they hate this slogan, we red and we ready? We red and we ready. Why they can't handle that?
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you,
Rowley.
sir.
Good night. Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Your Honorable Keith Rowley. I would like to thank Kevin Williams for having his team out and having me as his team. So tonight will be the first time I've been here at Rowley, and I'd like to speak about the roads of Carnage and Seavier.
You tell us you're having difficulty with those roads, right?
Yes, sir.
You know, the main road between West Moorings and Chagaramas is probably the one that the water lines break more than anywhere else in the country. As fast as we fix those lines, they break. It's either that, I don't know the answer. It's either they're too shallow and the heavy traffic is breaking them, or something is happening. I remember a few years ago when we thought we had that problem and we thought we solved it. We spent a significant amount of money to change out those lines. And I've seen, I think we put steel pipes in. And every time, you can't drive from Glencoe to Chagaramas and not meet a hole in the road. And the hole is caused by a break in the water line. So we're looking at that only this morning. We were talking about that outside of my constituency office there. There seems to be a permanent breaker there, because since I've been MP here, the amount of times that we have had to fix that water line in the road there, and it's a road where it's 2 lanes. So when you have to dig up 1 lane to go and get to the pipe, it's an inconvenience. It provokes people. But we have a very aggressive and very understanding minister. WASA is going through some restructuring, and we are funding WASA to do some technical upgrades. So we're hoping that this kind of problem, we'll find a solution to it, and you don't have that problem on the main road. On the Seaview Hill, one of the problems that we've had, which I tried to explain a little while ago, is that in the recent past, we have had to reprioritize government expenditure to focus on some things that were a little more immediate. And as a result of that, we were not able to spend as much money as was required on road maintenance. And some of our roads deteriorated quite visibly. We are now engaged in addressing that. So while you do have the inconvenience, a program of road upgrade and road improvement is underway. And even those who believe it was for elections, it wasn't for elections, it was when we could have afforded to have directed the resources to it. So come the 15th of August, the election would have come and gone, and the road repair and upgrade will continue. We have some problems with respect to getting the amount of crush rock that we need. We had problems with the bitumen, which we have solved, and we are now in a position, once we get our production up in the raw materials, to embark on piece by piece, one by one, fixing and upgrading our secondary and minor roads. That's an ongoing program, and it's going to go past this election on Monday, and it's going to go past the general election at the end of whenever it comes, because it's a national program that has to be done. But when we couldn't have directed the resources, how many of you would have been pleased with the government if we had directed all the money required for road reinstatement and not direct money to the health system during the COVID period? How many of you? So we had to prioritize, and now we are moving from one state to another.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. And ladies and gentlemen, I know we are having a very informative session with questions and answers here, but unfortunately, time is against us. So we will go to our, what I would think would be our final question here. I see the gentleman there, sir, but I know you did ask a question in Sangre Grande as well, too. So we do apologize. Time is against us, so we will take our final question.
Good evening, Dr. Rowley.
Good evening.
I am Risa Yewood from Marval. Dr. Rowley, you said...
You're from Diego Martin Northeast?
Yes.
When last you saw your MP?
Yesterday.
Yesterday?
Dr. Rowley, you said change bring about improvement, and we look forward to this reform to change our environment from health hazards and dangers to life and livelihood, with garbage piles and any and everywhere in our society. My question tonight is, when can we look forward to a cleaner country as we are affected by household garbage, dead animals, derelict vehicles, tires, and much more, which is in our communities, constituencies, and our beloved nation?
All right, since you've asked it, I got a brainwave. After this hurly-burly of the election is over, I would ask the Minister of Local Government and his colleagues and the private sector that we embark upon a major national cleanup campaign in time for Christmas. So we'll go on the card with that. And when we do that, the borough of Diego Martin should be fully operationalized, and we'll ask the borough to ensure that cleansing and transport and cleansing within the borough become and remains a priority. Because that is one of the major responsibilities of local government, to have transport to get to you and to cleanse the area in which. And while I'm doing that, I want to ask you as burgesses, stop throwing rubbish in the drains. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Rowley. And ladies and gentlemen, if you could just bear with us, I really hope that this segment where you had the opportunity to converse with Dr. Rowley, where the members of Diego Martin and surrounding areas got the opportunity to ask the questions, get the clarification, and really have a lot of your concerns be raised and addressed. I hope you appreciated the opportunity of Dr. Rowley, our Prime Minister, our political leader, making himself accessible to you. Ladies and gentlemen, before I turn over to Dr. Rowley for his closing comments, we are in the borough of Diego Martin with 10 standard bearers for the People's National Movement. 10 of them who are going to bring home all 10 for the PNM on Monday, 14th August. I would like to recognize these candidates, and I would ask them to rise as I call their names. For Bagatelle Blue Basin, Alina Wren. For Glencoe Goodwood La Puerta, Amber Keynes. For Corvin Richplain, Avenel Boyce. St. Lucian Cameron, Chelsea Mendez. Shagaramas Point Kumana, Kevon Williams. Bellevue Boise, Samuel Carter. Montcoco Alice Glenn, Lisa Richards Cole. Pity Valley Kokori, Marcia Maslin. For Diamond Vale, Kida James. And for Mocha, boys there, Damian Fornilla. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your 10 candidates, your 10 standard bearers for the People's National Movement who are going to bring home all 10 electoral districts in the new borough of Diego Martin. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, Diego Martin, we could do much better. Make some noise for your candidates. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, candidates, and all of the best of luck to you, although I don't think you would need it on Monday. Dr. Rowley, I turn over to you for closing comments.
Okay, Diego Martin. Thanks for coming out and allowing me the opportunity to speak on these matters that we touched on tonight. I want to take the opportunity, this being our last conversation, to thank Viash for the outstanding job that he has done. I am so pleased that our young people in the party and in the country are coming forward and distinguishing themselves in so very many ways. Thank you very much, Viash.
You're welcome.
Now, I know many of you here are the activists and you're taking part in an election campaign. Diego Martin, we're on a new trajectory. We are a new borough, and I would like to see that reflected in good results in the local government election. Support. This will be the local government election. This will be the election. This is the time when we would point to that the country, Trinidad in particular, and Diego Martin most spectacularly, sees the opportunity to make change. You're working hard. We're looking forward to a good result. But no election has ever been won without the voters coming to the polling station and the votes being counted at the end of the day. Work hard, encourage your neighbors, encourage your friends. Let it be a campaign that ends on a high note, where we voted specifically for this improvement that we're envisioning. And after that, we will grasp and paint our borough in whatever colors you would like. For the moment, it's all 10 red. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. And we shall prevail.